Hello, party people. How we doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Yourself?
I'm doing fabulous. Just got off another call with another mastermind. It was a mindset call.
Nice.
It was good. Good
What
reminders.
what were the takeaways?
This one was all about the word she used was contrast and how we have I mean, she started out talking about emotions and how emotions are they just are, you know. She didn't use these words, but I would say, emotions are energy in motion. They're just energy. They're just feelings. And it's our super smart brains that put meaning to them. So emotions by themselves are not good nor bad. They just are. And they are, if looked at that way, um, beacons or guiding lights. Um, and she's kind of a very spiritual person. She's actually Tony Robbins' coach, which is like name drop, right? She's the coach of the like number one personal development guy in the world. But anyway, she comes from a very spiritual place and very much into energetics and manifestation. She's got a pretty wild story actually. But anyway, she's talking about emotions and how emotions are just they just are. We are the ones that put labels on them. But if we can tune into them, we can use emotions as guiding lights or beacons to tell us if we are um, on the right path or if we are deviating from it. And if we are aligned with what we really want in the universe and if we are aligned with that manifestation path. And the contrast comes in. Um, And she used that word because she didn't want to put labels on things as like good or bad, but just as like, contrast being almost kind of like misalignment. So like if you are off that path, you're going to experience contrast between like what you want, where you're at, and the feeling that happens in there as you get away from that aligned path. So one of the people on their example his example was he owned a gym and it got shut down during COVID. And so then like he lost all his income. And then it was like, well, what do you want? And he's like, well, I just want to get back to that place and just kind of like, but if you were talking to yourself before COVID, would that be your goal to just maintain, to just be where you are? Or did you have bigger goals? He's like, well, yeah, of course I did. But then my circumstances changed and this thing happened, shut it down. And the moral of the story was like, listen, why would you know, sacrifice those goals just because you had this roadblock or um this contrast come up? What if that contrast was just something that was put in your way in order for you to then become the person that could then achieve those goals that you had originally? And that was kind of the whole thing was like this contrast or these obstacles that are put in our way are just the universe's way of giving us the opportunity for growth to become the person that we need to become in order to manifest whatever it is that we desire. That's it. Talk over.
Good morning.
Hey Sandra, how are you?
I'm doing much better, thank you.
Good. Are you back
I'm
in?
up at 6 in the morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say you must be back in Hawaii.
I am, yeah. I was deciding to make a regular time to wake up, which is a quarter to 6.
Quarter to
So,
6. I dig
yeah,
it. I was up at
right.
4 this morning
Probably for other reasons.
for other reasons. Putting bottles in babies' mouths.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I caught most of what you said. I just missed the intro just now.
yeah,
So,
the TLDR was that, obstacles are put in our way in order for us to grow and to become the person that we need to become to achieve whatever our goals are, to manifest whatever it is that we desire. And that was kind of one of the other things that came up was like when you're actually visualizing what you want, it needs to be from a place of abundance and not a place of lack. And one example was she asked us like, what do put your goal in the chat, put something that you want. And one person put in there, I want to be debt free, comma, building wealth. She's like, perfect example right here. I want to be debt free. Like, is that really what you want? Is that like a goal that's coming from a place of like abundance, or is it coming from a place of like scarcity? Like, I just want to like have enough to survive. It's like, if that's all you want, then the universe is going to continue to just give you what you want, which is like barely scraping by. Does that make sense? On the other end of that, like coming from a place of abundance, like there's so much money in the world, like there could never be, you could never not have enough. Like there's so much energy, everything is, abundant, whatever. From that place, the other end of that sentence was building wealth. That is coming much more from a place of abundance. Like, and when you envision yourself as just debt free versus envisioning yourself as someone who is like really building wealth, those are two different people.
That's right.
So yeah, so the person that you need to become to build wealth is going to be a different path, and the universe is going to present you with different opportunities in order to become that person. So anyway, that was kind of one part of it. The other part was just, not labeling your emotions and using them as tools for growth, using them as signposts or beacons to tell you whether or not you're on the right path, or whether you're experiencing some contrast or some misalignment. Um, and I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but I feel like it comes up a lot in my life because fear is a big obstacle for me, like fear of rejection, fear of um, humiliation, or not like being good enough. Like that drives me a lot, but sometimes in a negative way, and it keeps me playing small. So it comes up a lot for me. But one thing that I always try to remind myself is that fear is nothing but um, a sign that you're going in the right direction. Like fear is the ultimate compass. And in the terms of flow states, like fear is, in a sense, it's required for flow. And here's what I mean. Like for flow, you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. You have to step into fear a little bit because flow happens just outside of your current skill level in whatever it is that you're doing. This is why sports, especially action adventure sports, are so packed with flow triggers, and people get so, you know, addicted to them, flow junkies, because fear is a huge trigger for flow. Fear drives focus. When you are scared of something, you pay way more attention to it, right? So if we need to step just outside of our comfort zone and increase the challenge in whatever it is we're doing, our brain does not want us to do that because our brain wants to keep us safe. So your survival brain, your limbic system, is going to ramp up those survival mechanisms, and it's going to try to keep you in your little comfort zone. And fear is a part of that, the feeling of fear. But the feeling of fear itself, kind of circling back to this whole talk from earlier, is neither good nor bad. It is nothing more than a signal. Just like pain is just a signal. It can be uncomfortable. And if it's loud enough, then, we really need to do something about it. But both of those things are just signals, usually signals meant to make us take action. So the survival brain, its only job is to keep you alive. It uses fear and pain to keep you safe and inside your comfort zone. But we know that our peak states of performance, both physically and cognitively, flow states, are right outside of that comfort zone. So if we feel a little bit of fear before we dive into something, especially something we're skilled at, that's usually a good sign. It's usually a good sign that right on the other side, we're going to find flow state. And if it's aligned, if what you're doing is aligned with your purpose, with your, your version of yourself that you're trying to become, with your big, high, hairy, audacious goals, then that fear is your compass.
It's making me think about if it's helpful. I'm thinking for me, because fear feels the same emotionally, whether it's something that it's really telling you don't do this versus something being afraid to do something because you're going out of your comfort zone. And just making me think
Yep.
about the emotion is the same, like, I don't know, when you talk about that, I think a lot about some of my family halfway around the world who are having to be very careful because of the situation in the world right now. So their fear
Yeah.
is guiding them to be protective of themselves. And so, but it's the same emotion about something, it's the same feeling about something that's like, oh, I'm afraid of doing this, so I'm going to stop, even though it would push me to the next level.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, context is
but
really important.
yeah, but it's making me think of taking a step when I feel that fear, to take the step to recognize the concept. And for me, even giving it a different name would be
Mhm.
helpful because
Mhm.
I don't know what yet. I'm just coming up with this idea right now. But to recognize, because that helps me when I name things,
Yeah.
maybe categorize them and name it. It's like, okay, this is the fear that is holding me back versus this is a fear that's truly protecting me. And even though my
Yeah.
unconscious feels the same, how can I take that leap forward when it's the fear of which is preventing me? And does naming
Yeah.
that help?
Yeah. When you come up with a name, let us know.
Okay,
Because I
I
think that's
throw it
really
out to
helpful
the
too.
group. I throw it out to the group.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll all
But,
think about it.
but
Because I think that's really
yeah,
helpful. Yeah. And the more in tune you get, you know, the more you can differentiate. I'm sure we've all felt this before, um, around people or around situations or out in the world. Like you walk by a super dark alleyway in a bad part of town at night, and you just get that kind of fear creeping up. That's probably pretty useful and most likely pretty valid in keeping you safe. Like probably, I don't know if I want to walk down that alley.
It's a different level of flow. Like
Yeah.
it's flow a different meaning.
Well, it is, and you can walk down that alley and then get mugged and drop right into flow as you defend yourself in your life. This is literally like the evolutionary reason for flow is survival in that situation. That's true. That's flow state, just like everything else we're talking about.
But the other stuff that's mentioned, they become neurotags. So renaming them is, like positive psychology of, you
Yeah.
know, Joe's not perfect. It's perfect Paul that's perfect.
Mm,
Right. So, oh, I caught Paul hanging out today. Then it's not like me attacking my own individuality and trying to, judging myself. Right. It's me having an awareness and then releasing it and letting it go. So the story thing is, the story we tell is the truth we know. And so do we tell a story that's one of fear and then we live in that place, or do we tell a story of abundance and we live in that place? The choice is whoever wants to become empowered. Right? Like it's a
true.
choice. Do you
Yeah.
want to look for this type of reflection or that type of reflection? And I do think the fear side of it will hit masculine energy more and differently than feminine energy. Because feminine energy, that safety is being sought at a different level, more the where I feel like flow is something that the guys are out there creating. But that, I don't know, that's raises an interesting topic of how flow differentiates between the masculine and feminine.
I
We all
don't, I
have
mean,
masculine and feminine.
what was that, Susan?
We all have masculine and feminine.
Right,
And
right.
Sure.
and
Yeah.
our emotions are from our subconscious. They're not from our conscious mind. So a lot of like professional jobs, they'll say motion, not emotions. So when you get to that blip like that, you're going into the abyss. It's you're relying on your training. Just like if you are like taking classes and you're educating and you don't realize you just project it. When you get at certain levels, you're just projecting it through each and every different thing that you studied all your life. That's the ability where if you don't have that ability, then you're in trouble. Then you're like, you gotta, whoa, I gotta back off. I gotta do something about this. So I'm doing shadow work. This is why when you're talking about contrast and all this is all a part of shadow work. Because if you don't watch out after 40 years of it, PTSD,
Sure.
and you gotta when you're dealing with PTSD, every time something comes up, you gotta put that emotion with it so you can let it go. You gotta bring the subconscious into the conscious so you can let it go. If not, you're gonna every time that comes up, you're gonna go through the emotions again. It's like closure and
Right.
bringing the subconscious into the conscious.
Yeah, that's what Joe was talking about when he mentioned neurotags earlier.
Right.
Um, and just to go back to Joe's kind of question about masculine and feminine when as it relates to flow specifically, it may show up differently in those two energies. But I don't think it's any more or less prevalent with either of them.
Right.
I think it's a more fundamental experience that happens in on every part of that spectrum. For example, like a more masculine energy flow state might be these action adventure sports like rock climbing, something that's very like intense and physical,
Right.
or MMA fighting to just go
Right.
full on. But something much more on the feminine energy side of that could be, conversation with a close friend or loved one, right? You can experience just as much flow in that situation as you can in the action and adventure sports. They may feel a little bit different and they may have different, characteristics that show up in different amounts, but it's all flow. Your
Right.
sense of time goes away. All the characteristics are going to show up, maybe in different amounts, but your sense of time dilates. Things slow way, way, way down, or they speed way, way, way up. That conversation can last for 5 hours, but it feels like it's over in 5 minutes. Or you can, go skydiving, and that 30 seconds feels like an hour because it's like frame by frame. You're just locked in so tightly to that. So that's one thing. Both are incredibly enjoyable experiences. Our sense of self kind of dissolves in both, maybe to differing degrees. The surfer may feel totally one with the wave, or the musician with his instrument. Um, I'm thinking now of like something like um, in a group flow, like that sense of self tends to vanish as well. I'm thinking like a concert where you can kind of like start to feel one with the entire crowd. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced something like that.
Mhm.
Even in a yoga class, I've experienced this, where everybody seems to be of one mind as everybody just kind of flows together. Also in religious ceremony, right, with that repetition and ritual. Fun fact, have you guys ever read Breath by James Nestor? Great book. But he talks about this in there. And we talked about it in our flow courses, but the rosary and other ritualistic prayers a lot of them are set up, probably intentionally, to match up with certain cadences of breath in order to get the brainwave and heart waves frequencies synchronized.
That's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is one example of that. The rosary is another example of that. I thought there was one from the Jewish tradition, Sandra. You probably will, once you have
I
this,
don't remember from the book.
you're gonna
I do
you're gonna
know,
you're
like,
gonna
the first prayer you say in the morning is a prayer of gratitude. So we joke
yeah,
about how, science is now proving what the spiritual technology discovered thousands of years ago.
it's known forever. Yeah, especially
Yeah,
around gratitude and compassion
yeah,
and this is another example, like getting because the rosary, the way that the words are put together, um, and the rhythm of how it's said is like perfectly aligned for like this 5-second inhale and exhale, which has been shown to get your heart and brain coherence aligned, which is, incredibly powerful for many things, but just in terms of flow, a bunch of people doing that at the same time, and we all get on the same wavelength, like literally the same frequency, that drops us into flow, and our sense of self starts to go away, and it becomes merged with the collective.
I'm thinking maybe there's a tradition of people rock back and forth when they're chanting.
Mm.
That could be what he's
That would be
referring to.
another, yeah,
Yeah,
another really good example of this innate intelligence of using flow triggers. And in this scenario, it's the rhythmic movement
yeah.
to become embodied, along with probably some kind of chanting or ritual speech. Perfect. These are ways that religion has been leveraging flow triggers to help people, because flow is no different than the mystical experience or the experience of God or whatever else we want to call those experiences. They are also, in a neuroscientific way, we would consider those flow states. They are the more extreme.
Metrogori is like that. Some people can't go there because it's so spiritual and it's like people are just floating around that they actually get sick. It's that bad, you know. Metrogori.
Interesting.
They
Yeah.
say you can't even buy like a piece of jewelry from there and bring it back. And it's really one of the most spiritual places.
Where is that located?
Metrogori in
Yeah.
Israel.
In Israel?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard of that place before.
I haven't even heard of that place either, and I spent a lot of time there, so I'm curious if there's a different pronunciation.
Maybe, well,
How do you spell it? Yeah.
I was raised Roman Catholic, so I don't know. A lot of people, Roman Catholic, go to Metrogori.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll explore.
Yeah, interesting. So anyway, flow's cool.
I mean, you kind of touching on these patterns though, even within the struggles of finances that were discussed in a previous call, with the idea of doing neuro drills and understanding your emotional states as like, you know, once you have the awareness that you're in an emotional state that isn't serving you, like what are you doing to change that emotional state that
Yeah.
takes you back towards flow, right?
Yeah, yeah. So thanks for bringing us back, Joe. We were out there for a minute. You know, again, the emotions are nothing more than energy and motion. They're just our sensory experience being turned into this feeling of, or better yet, a
Something we
motivation.
slap a label on.
It's a motivation for action. That's what an emotion is, right? I feel this thing, so I need to take action on it. I feel, I mean, I feel hungry, find food. That's a really crude example. Like, it's only when we start attaching labels to the feelings that we have, and specifically around valuing them and attaching value to them, like good or bad, that things get a little hairy. As it relates to flow, I mean, I was having this conversation with a client the other day. She has a lot of anger. And it's mostly directed at herself when she like doesn't do something right, or, you know, in her words, she screws something up. She's so mad at herself. And she tends to distract herself and procrastinate, like we all tend to do at times. And then she gets angry at herself again. And long story short, I said to her, why can't you use that anger and direct it at doing the thing that you are trying to do? Instead of getting angry and down on yourself and calling yourself names and having all this negative self-talk, what if that anger was actually your nervous system's way of helping you do the thing that you need to do? Like, what if you're procrastinating on this thing, you're distracting yourself, but you know you need to do it? What if you started to feel this anger like bubbling up in you, and instead of directing it back at yourself for not doing the thing, what if you could just harness that and let it just bubble up a little bit until you feel like you need to punch somebody in the face, instead of punching somebody in the face or yelling at yourself and being mean to yourself, you just started doing the thing. What would happen? And she thought about it for a second and she's like, you're insane. You're out of your mind, but I'll try it. And she did, and it helped. And it's not that, we all need to get angry in order to do anything, but it was just the idea that the emotion was there for a purpose, and that purpose was to take action in some way. And if we can direct our actions based on those emotions, and we can then befriend them, they can be tools. They can be limitless supplies of energy. The other example in the context of flow is the flow cycle, and how, do you guys know what the flow cycle is, and the struggle phase and all that? This is the training
Yep.
that is not quite done in the community yet.
No,
So,
I think I don't even really know for
okay.
sure yet. And I've been watching like so many of them. I have an idea because of work and I was in a
Yeah.
flow, but I have no idea.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a quick overview before we get all those trainings up and you can go watch them.
Okay.
Flow works in a cycle. The flow state is obviously the goal that we want to get to, but it's not a binary experience. You don't just turn it on and turn it off. It doesn't work like that. It happens in stages.
Right.
So the flow is that state of total optimal state of consciousness where we feel our best, perform our best, where every action just seamlessly flows from one to the other. We don't have to think about anything. We're just totally relying on our skills, and it feels amazing and enjoyable.
Right.
That's kind of the outcome of these first stages. The first stage of the cycle is called struggle, because it feels like a struggle. And what the purpose of this stage is gathering resources. So we are gathering all of the information that we need. We are learning the skill that we need to develop. We are holding all these things in our working memory, and we're really just like grinding, grinding, grinding. The cool thing about the struggle phase is that it can last for a huge variance in time. It can last for, just brief seconds, all the way up to months or even years if it drags out for a long time. So think about two examples. First example is writing a book. When you're writing a book, there is a lot of stuff that goes into the first phase of writing a book. All the research you have to gather, you do all these interviews, you have to piece things together. You got to throw up all these note cards and try to figure out, where's this going to go? Where's this going to go? And it's frustrating because you'll try to do some things and that's not going to work. And then you got to go try something else. It can be very frustrating. This is the struggle phase. It's a loading phase, trying to get things figured out. This can last for months in that scenario. Then on the other side, think of a surfer that's about to drop into a huge wave, or a mountain biker that's about to hit a really steep section of the hill. Their struggle phase is going to last seconds, because as they approach, they're going to have to commit and drop right in and get into flow immediately, or they're going to crash and it's going to end really badly. So that struggle phase is this long, the writing the book's super long. So it can vary. That's the point. But what always tends to happen, or what needs to happen, and there's actually a really cool paper on this. It's called The First Few Seconds of Flow. And it's about the end of the struggle phase and what happens there in your brain. Basically, what they found was that your brain has to activate a fight or flight response. You have to push yourself to the point where you want to fight. And you have to choose to fight. When you are at the top of that steep hill, You have to literally attack the mountain. There is no like sitting back because you will fall and you will get hurt. In order to survive, you have to attack. That's why it really activates your amygdala, it activates your thalamus, it activates this salience network in your brain, and you have to choose the battle. This is where most people screw up when it comes to finding flow and why they don't get it and they just get stuck in this struggle for so long is because they don't choose the fight. They let their brain, that safety mechanism, run the show and keep them comfortable. So instead of pushing themselves and choosing the fight, they don't, and they stay comfortable. And they, in the context of like our day-to-day work, instead of pushing past the point of frustration and fighting a little bit more, they go do something else. Like, oh, this is getting too hard. Go do something else. What they don't realize is that they just started the cycle all over again. Now they're just back in the struggle on something else. And it's going to take them 15 to 20 minutes to now switch to that new task. So their productivity is just garbage. Go ahead, Sandra. Good question.
Is that moment of choosing the fight, is that generally a short moment? Or does it, because it seems like I'm just thinking about my own sense when I've gotten and made the choice to go into it and not into it. And
Yeah.
it seems like it feels really hard, but then it's over quickly.
Yep. Yeah. Great question because it is short. Once you choose the fight and you go into it, you get a flood of neurochemicals. Your norepinephrine and dopamine go way up. So you get more focus and you get amped up. But the cool thing, after you choose that, when you actually get into flow, which let me back up a little bit because after the struggle, when you choose that fight, right before you get into flow, there is a little bit of a release that needs to happen. So here's how it would work. Let's just keep with the writing example. You're struggle, you're getting frustrated, like you're pushing until eventually you're like, you want to rip your hair out. Okay. You're going to choose the fight, but you're going to take a moment to release. And this is really important. You take a step back and you get into your body and out of your head in order for you to let this frontal lobe and all of the stuff you've been holding in your mind to let it all go and let your subconscious mind start to go to work and start to make different connections. It's switching from what we call the task positive or the executive control network, which is very like focus, and almost tunnel vision, to the default mode network, which is our like creativity network, where we actually do daydreaming and rumination and all that kind of stuff, but where we have access to the whole unconscious mind. So this is great for making connections and seeing patterns. And that quick step away, when you come back and you choose that fight and you go right back into it, then the flow comes. During the release and flow state, all of that like fight energy, like your heart rate's going up, your blood pressure is rising, you know, it's not this most comfortable state. If we've ever been in a fight or flight state, it's not that great.
too much.
Yeah, yeah. This is not like this is why the adrenaline junkie, when they talk about action and adventure sports athletes, is a misnomer because they're not adrenaline junkies because adrenaline doesn't feel very good.
No, it don't. Makes you
It's
sick.
just like boom, go, go, go. But they're flow junkies is a better term because when you get into flow, all of those things drop. Your heart rate, your respiration rate, everything actually calms down. But you're incredibly alert and focused. So you get all of the cognitive benefits of the clarity of thought, all the neurochemical benefits of the dopamine, the norepinephrine. You start adding oxytocin and endorphins, like anandamide, into that mix. Makes it a hugely pleasurable experience. You get all of that, but you get a very calming effect on the nervous system. Your parasympathetic system actually kicks into gear here a little bit. So to answer your question, yes, you choose the fight, but it's just choosing the fight and pushing you past that point that then drops you in and you rebound back down. So it's very short-lived.
That makes sense. And then can you give examples of, you said to take it before you step in, to take a step back, to be more embodied. Is that something to actively do, I guess, once you
Yeah.
understand this process? So can you give examples of that?
Yep. Yeah, that's the release phase, and it can be very short. Um, so if we stick with the writing example, writing, you're getting frustrated, like you're pushing, 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 you're gathering all this information, you're starting to write, but it's like like a slog, right? Trying to get one sentence out is like, oh, my brain just doesn't work. You get frustrated to a point that it's a tricky is not the right word. It's a different experience for everybody. You have to find where the line is for you.
I
Um,
experienced this. I know exactly what you're saying. It's different than writer's block. You have a problem expressing yourself in
yeah,
written words.
I just mean the line of frustration.
Right.
Yeah, that you need to push it to. Basically, you push it to the point until, for me, like I literally want to throw something through the computer. Or I will audibly say like, "Ugh!" Like that is like the definition of my nervous system just like getting so amped that it's about time to choose the fight. When that happens, I take a short break and I let myself cool off a tad and I do some neuro drills. I'll do some bouncing, I'll do some shifting, I'll do some infinity walks, might do some vision drills, I'll do movement drills, or I'll just go for a short walk. That's fine too. Do some breathing drills. Anything that gets you out of my head and into my body. That's the key. Einstein would go sail his boat. He was famous for going into the little lake um, outside of, what was he at, Yale or Princeton? I forget.
Princeton.
Princeton. There's like a little lake out there, and he would go sail his little mini sailboat out there. And he didn't know how to sail a boat. So he would always get stuck out there, have to get saved. Or he would go for long walks. Hemingway, I think, used to do this too. And what they would say is that it helps me clear my mind. And then they go back into the problem. Usually they'll have the insight out there once they stop thinking about it. It's called the paradox of inspiration. When we go, like, this is why we have ideas when we take a shower, as we're falling asleep, as we go on long walks and we get out of our head, boom, inspiration strikes. It's because we've let it go. We've let this default mode network go to work, and our unconscious mind is making the connections. And then boom, one comes to the surface and it's like, oh, now I know. Okay, so it can be very short time for you to release, and then you come back in You get back on the same exact thing you were doing. And that's the key is this is one block of time that you work on one thing. When you do that release phase, the worst thing you can do is go look at your phone or go look at another website, go read an article about something. No, bad idea. That's going to take you out of this cycle. Is that helpful?
Right. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, I
that's
know
what I
what you're
do.
saying. It's helpful.
Good. And then lastly, after you get through the flow phase is recovery. You have to recover because flow is super energy demanding. So is the struggle phase. But you have to let yourself recover. You can do a short recovery. You know, the flow cycle works alongside what are called ultradian cycles in human biology or chronobiology. So we have circadian cycles, which most people are aware of, or diurnal cycles, right? Which are daily, usually in around a 24-hour period based on sleep and wakefulness, light and dark, that kind of stuff. We also have much longer cycles, which are called infradian cycles. Think of a woman's menstrual cycle, the cycles of the moon, tidal cycles, not tidal cycles, but cycles of the moon, or the seasons, the, you know, 17-year or 13-year cycle of cicadas. You guys are familiar with those. They just go hibernate for 17 years and then they pop out and just overtake, which was supposed to happen in Arizona this year, but I didn't see any. Weird. Wonder if they're waiting a year. I don't know. Anyway, we got long cycles, we got daily cycles, and then ultradian cycles are these like mini cycles that happen multiple times a day. Think of your sleep cycle. That's an example of an ultradian cycle. They're generally like 90 to 120 minutes long. And you will go through peaks and troughs of your energy and your focus ability in these cycles. So the flow cycle fits really nicely on top of that ultradian cycle. So what that means is that it's best to set aside 90 to 120 minutes for one of these like flow cycles or flow blocks.
Are you saying that you can control when those happen? Is that part of the intention to figure that out?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. And there's more to be said about the power of like timing and matching your biorhythms as far as like what kind of work should be done when.
Mhm.
Most people do more cognitively heavy work. They do better with that stuff in the early hours of the day. It's when they're most alert, they're most able to focus and perform that kind of work that requires intense focus on one thing. Those types of people, which is like 70% of people, if you read that book that Joe put in the chat, The Power of When, it goes into great depth in this stuff. It's a pretty good book. Is that the Michael Bruce book or is, yeah, okay. There's another one too. I forget the author's name. Anyway, the afternoon is generally a better time for more creative work, more brainstorming, more meetings, more reactive type work. Client calls, meetings, brainstorming, sessions, that kind of stuff. But it all still can kind of line up to these biorhythms of these ultradian cycles of 90 to 120 minutes. But the type of work you do, you could split up in that way. So, yeah, 90 to 120 minutes. At the end of that, you can take a small break, and then maybe you can go right into another block. And then you would want to take, usually by the end of those 2 blocks, after 4 hours or something, you want to take a longer break. Like refuel, get some movement, like some exercise or something to do, like a nervous system reset. During that time, then you can go back in. Most people are able to get maybe 2 to 3 of these flow blocks in a day if they're really killing it and they don't have a ton of like meetings and client work and stuff like that. And that's not to say that you can't find flow like with your clients and doing that other stuff, but I'm more talking about like deep work on really high leveraged projects.
I know what you mean, but some people work different. Like I think I work different, but when I was at my best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's maybe being a woman too and a mom and all that. Like we multitask different, I think, when we work. Like I'll be like, oh, I'll get back to this. Like I don't feel the energy for that right now, and I'll go to the next thing. And then, but I will go back to it. I won't like not finish it.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that that is a really good way to just stay in the struggle phase all the time.
Right, I know that. You're right. But when you said that, that's what made me think, well, that's right. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And this is a really common thing for women especially. I'm not picking on women, but
Right.
but there is this idea that women tend to multitask better.
No, I think too much,
Yes.
not better.
Any multitasking is too much.
Right.
It's a, and I know some really smart people that still assure me that they can multitask. And I'm like, you're sacrificing efficiency and really deep work when you multitask. Your brain does not split itself into like 2 modes. And
Right.
it takes a certain amount of time for you to switch a task, gather all those resources in your brain, and then go full into it. I don't care who you are. It just, even if it's 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes that you're going to have to take to switch and then start this whole process of winding up again to get into flow on that thing. As soon as you switch, you start it over.
Right.
When those things come up, because they will, when you're in the mode, like when I'm in a flow state and I'm really working on something like really hardcore, nothing else comes into my realm. I have my door closed. There's a sign on it with a big fire truck. It says fire truck off. I'm flowing. Okay. So people know not to bug me. My newborns don't care that I have that sign on my door, which makes it a little tough. But that's also why I have earplugs and these big headphones so that I can completely control all distractions and keep them out of here. But inevitably, something is going to come up, and it's usually from inside my brain. And that's if I'm not super deep into a flow state, something will creep up in there, and it's like, oh, you just have this random thought, like I got to call that guy back. Okay, worst thing I could do is call that guy back, right? So I will have just a pad of paper with a pencil over there off to the side. I will flip it over. I will write that thing down. I will flip it back over. That's it. Get it out of my head and onto paper and back to what I was doing. And the whole idea is to just keep those distractions away because everything is a distraction if it's not directly related to the task at hand. Make sense?
Mhm.
Cool. Sammy, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
We are just wrapping up. We started at 9 this morning, but good to have you here.
My apologies. I got stuck on a call for work.
All good, all good. We're just hanging out. Coffee hour is
Okay.
just hangout time. We're talking about all sorts of stuff today. Do you have any pressing questions or things you want to talk about? Oh,
No,
yeah.
not really. I'm always trying to um improve my life. So any chance I get to, get around like-minded people, I try to take advantage of it.
Awesome. Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So man, we covered a lot today. We're all over the place. Talking about chanting and rituals and spiritual, talked about flow cycles. We talked about productivity. What didn't we talk about? Joe, you've been quiet, man.
Oh
What's on
man,
your
you've been listening. You the flow cycles though, I mean, I feel like we covered a lot today on the importance of neuro drills. So it's you thinking that's more of like the prescription neuro drills that people got to get into? You need to know
So
like that safety level. Is that like the highest priority for the change in impacting this?
kind of the awareness is key, of course, especially around the emotions. When the emotions come up, you got to have the awareness that you're having an emotion in order for you to stay in that gap and choose whether or not you want to label it, maybe not, but then what you want to do about it. Choose your response, right? When we talk about flow
Neuro
states,
drills response, right? Choose neuro
neuro
drills.
drills can be the response. Yeah, it can be. It doesn't have to be. Remember, we talked about the anger. If the anger is getting up and out of control, and you're like finding yourself like in too much of that fight or flight state, that's not helpful. Yeah, maybe we do some burst breathing or to override that response, or some down regulators if those work, bag breathing, whatever else. Or you use that to attack whatever it is that you're doing. You use that energy, right? So it's all about context. Like when I'm, you know, when you're that mountain biker going down that steep section of hill, you need the fight or flight to attack. You need the courage in that moment. And the anger in that moment can be useful for that. But somebody that's not very skilled and is going to go attack that mountain, that anger turns into anxiety when it gets ramped up too much, and they're going to make a mistake and they're going to hurt themselves.
Right.
That makes sense. So
Mhm.
if when it goes too far, yes, it can be detrimental. So you got to be able to tune in. You got to be able to accurately assess your own skill level and the challenge that you're, facing.
I mean, everybody essentially kind of creates their own flexibility on the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that a question? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
another way of saying it, I guess.
Yeah. 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 That's right. And it all comes down to experience, skill level, and awareness or mindfulness. Mindfulness is key when it comes to flow, and avoiding the pitfalls of flow, or what some call the dark side of flow. Taking too many risks, because risk is such a big trigger. Talking kind of about sports again, mainly, but you can take massive risks in business, financially, or like putting yourself into situations that maybe shouldn't be in, like giving a keynote on a subject you have no idea what it's about, you know. That's risky. Different kind of
Speaking from
risk.
experience, perhaps.
I've given some speeches on subjects not super up on, but they were low risk. I wasn't getting paid, and it was just fun experience.
Those are reps.
It was reps, yes. Reps on performing under anxiety conditions. But yeah, anyway.
Gotta run. Thanks,
Oh,
Rich.
yeah. It is past 10 o'clock. We were having so much fun. We went a little bit long. I do have to go because I have a client.
Yeah,
But thank you
thank you.
guys.
That was really, I'm really excited to be able to come, and that was really great. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
good. Glad
Yeah,
you got some
thank
value
you.
out of it. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
guys for
having me.
showing
I
up. Of
appreciate it.
course, thanks for being here, Sammy.
You're very
We'll see
welcome.
you guys. We'll see you guys around in the community, and I'll post this in the members area if anybody wants to go back and watch it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.